What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here from Taco Moto. I'm in the shop alone at night. It's cool. It's cooling down outside. Today it was like 199 degrees in Las Vegas, and I'm closing things up. And I had this thought of an email that I had exchanged with a fellow the other day. He asked, how come we never do any videos explaining like the shop itself or talking about any of the bikes that are in the build process? So I thought I'd give you like a little overview of our build program, a few bikes that are in the queue. Some are in waiting, some are already in the active line, and maybe give you an insight look on some of the things that we do as we have a bike through. So we'll take in new bikes, new owners will send us their new bike, or we will help you coordinate the purchase of a bike. Once we have the bike here, then we'll do a tear down. We do a complete pull apart. We are basically doing like a rebuild from frame up. So we'll pull the swing arm off. Bearings are greased, so we'll do a complete disassembly on the swing arm and grease everything as far as the swing arm goes. We'll pull the steering apart and we'll check for grease, re-grease, look at the seals, look at the bearings, make sure everything is good there. And then we reset all the preload as far as bearings go everywhere around. We will do anti-seize here on the back bolts to prevent corrosion lockup. There are just any number of like PDI things. So like a new bike from a dealer would or could or should go through like a full comprehensive PDI inspection. And so we do that. So these bikes are really exhaustively gone through. And that's basically like a full and complete race prep. So if you were going to go and do any type of adventure race, Baja, a rally, any of those riders in a professional works team setting or just a really high level program is going to do a very exhaustive strip down of the bike, test and inspect everything. And so we do that to every single machine that comes through. There are some bikes that turn out to be in really good shape. That is to say they don't really need a lot of grease. They don't really need anything. The bolts are factory tight. They're all to spec from the dealer. And then in other instances, we find loose fasteners, things that are greased in a weird way. We've seen swing arms that one side is dry, the other side is greased really well. We've seen manufacturing slag in the steering stem bearings, little pellets. If you're in any of the KTM Ride forums, you know that was a thing in the past. It seems to have tapered off when the 24 generation, the new generation chassis bikes came out. We saw that from time to time, but that's really subsided, and I don't know that we've seen any of those in a while. But we check every single bike every single time, and we will go through and torque every fastener and make sure everything is exactly to spec. On top of that, so that process happens. We just call that basically our Baja race prep. And included in that are quite a few upgrades or essentials. So there's like our essential upgrade package, and included in that is that PDI like I'm talking about. And then beyond that, a rider will spec out the upgrades and the upfits that he wants to do. And so then a bike is basically transformed. Those things are added, installed on. This one here, maybe something interesting is we locate the Get ECU Wi-Fi module in the under fender or in the rear quarter panel fender. Here it's hidden underneath the side panel, and then we've made a 3D printed bracket that locates that there. And whether you have the new style, which is the half size, or the full size, the full width, let me say it like this, it's the same width, but it's a little taller. This little bracket can accommodate either one, and over the course of the SX1 ECU, there's been both footprints, and so we made an adapter here that will fit that. And there's little posts here that are for the TPI bike. There's a pressure sensor, an ambient pressure sensor that lives here on a TPI bike, and that's why there's two little standoff feet. You'll see those are molded here into the plastic themselves. So on a 4-stroke bike, that's not here. It gives us perfect opportunity to make a little bracket and to mount it there. I show all the time in the bike build videos our electrical harness system, and the bracket here, you'll see there's the relay. That's the master control relay. And then this all lives in a little 3D printed holder here, and then that gets zip tied to the frame. And so it's tidy, clean, it's way up out of the way. Starting capacitor goes over here. Let me show you what that looks like. So we have a bracket foot that we make that mounts the starting capacitor, and then it lives on a tab. The motocross bikes, the competition bikes, they come with a starting capacitor, but the enduro bikes, puzzlingly, do not. You would think that would 100% be the other way around, but it's not the case at all. So we make a bracket, we install the capacitor, and that is hardwired in to our power harness system. And then here you'll see this harness cable that I have my hand on here, that feeds up through, comes up along, and then we have a power tap that goes to the battery. And the whole point of this system is so you don't have a jumble of connections to your battery. The only aftermarket connections are here, and then everything is distributed from that system, and then it powers forward. It comes up here. It's this wire right here. It comes up, and then you get this brick right here, and this will be mounted up here behind the headlight mask in a vertical position. And so this is sort of like a rain hood. And then in here are two connection ports, two different circuits. We have circuit 1 and 2, and then they're labeled and identified. And one of these is direct power to the battery. And so essentially it's hot at all times. And the other one is engine hot. And so you get to decide how you want to power your accessories. If you want to have a GPS or a phone charger or anything like that, you can decide exactly how you want to power that. And then this will land here. We have these in 3 ports, and then 5 ports. So you can get really exotic and have all kinds of accessories. And then these are toolless and solderless, crimpless. You don't have to have any electrical experience at all to be able to land any of the circuits here. You'll just strip your wire for your accessory, pop it in there, latch down the connector latch here, the arm, and then you're in. Pop that thing in there, and this will live permanently right here, and so that rider has the opportunity to add his electrical circuits as he likes. Now, we also have a tower going on this bike, the taco tower, and that's not here. I do have a bike over there. I'll show you what that looks like in a finished condition. But all of this wiring, this jumble of wires, it's going to be self-contained. It's going to be tidied into that tower, and then we'll add more accessories, more lighting circuits and features onto that as well. Let's see what else is interesting about this build. So this is the Mako 360 system, and if you've seen this before, you know how great it is in terms of isolating the metal-to-metal contact from the bars. So you have 2 skateboard wheels. This is how I describe it. You've got 2 rubber dampers here, these 2 skateboard wheels, and then the bar passes through there. So there's no direct metal contact between fastening and attaching that to the bike and the bars themselves. And then there's something here in the middle they call the shark bite, and that, let's see if I can pull this apart. So this little damper right here, this will get clamped to the bar itself, and so it'll be rigid and fixed in a certain angled position, and then it's located here in this, and this controls the fore and aft twisting of the bar, and then this controls and dampens any vibrations from shock hits or like tire or engine vibes that want to go into the handlebars. That's what this is for. And we use a fairly soft, the purple in fact is the softest of the compounds. And then this one, this orange up here, is fairly hard. We find that have this combination, a little bit stiffer here and a little softer here, is a really good setup for vet riders. And then we'll come along here and tap in the end of the bars and then put in fast company inserts that'll go in the bars and act as vibration dampers. On a lot of bikes will get, and I think this one's going to get these heated grips right here. You'll see these Kosos work really good. They're very good. And a lot of riders will use the OD Rogue grips because they have good damping, good cushioning. This connector right here, this goes up to the Get ECU map switch that's not on the bike. There's no bars. Suspension on this bike is going to be sent out and done, and so we have our own program for that. I'm not sure what's happening with the wheels, if those are going to be upgraded or exactly what's going on there. This is a 6 days bike, so you can see it's got an orange frame and the orange anodized, the billet triple clamps as well. People ask from time to time, is it worth the money to get a 6 days over a standard? You know, it depends. It depends on what your interest is for those premium components. So you get You get brand or model specific graphics, orange frame. There is a solid rear rotor versus slotted. Special seat. We talked about the triple clamp. So there's a handful of things. You get laser anodizing or laser etching rather on the muffler, and then it's a premium finish. You don't get this like, I don't know, Honda bronze. It's not quite a Honda bronze, but it's sort of like a magnesium color. You don't get that. You just get black. So here's standard. So a standard muffler is going to be black. And so there are riders who want those premium touches. And if you were to price those, if you were to go out and buy those components, you'll spend more money adding those to a bike and turning a bike into a 6 days than you will just getting a 6 days. You could always kind of replicate, clone the graphics package. So there's ways you could do it. You'll have a black frame. And so really the only way to get an orange frame is 6 days. So it's kind of a look. It's an aesthetic thing. It's up to the rider. I tell people, you know, if money's not an issue and you like the bling, then do it. Why not? Bikes are toys. We are children playing with our toys. If you want to play with your toys in a particular way and get a trim package like that, do it. Why not? Of course. But just know that it doesn't make a lot of sense economically. The math doesn't really work out per se. So it's more of an emotional decision rather than a intellectual one, or in terms of the finances of it. But I use the word intellectual in terms of motorcycling. How dumb are we that we do this anyway? We subject ourselves to the risk and the danger, and then we spend all this money on all these things. So I don't know, the two things really don't add up, do they? So this is just some of the parts. There's a Scott stabilizer that go on. So we build a cart for each one of the builds. So we really like stack out a cart. Sometimes it's 2 or 3, depending on how much stuff is going on a bike. Oh, here's something interesting I just caught my eye. This is the Swift Kicker. So I'm a real fan of this kickstand. What it does is it allows you can take your foot and you can just grab it here on this little lip, and then let me see if I can pull it out. It extends, and then I will see if I can control the retraction. It'll want to go back really fast and aggressive. Well, there it goes. So you can make it super short or super long depending on the ride height of your bike. Also, as the terrain sort of, as you might stop in a low spot, like in a hole, and then you're going to want to extend that out, or you might be on a rock and it's an awkward position. And so you don't have to reposition your bike. You can just move the length. You can adjust the length of your kickstand. And it's got this really beefy head area here, this knuckle. I know the bolt's loose. We haven't torqued it yet. And so that is, and it's all rebuildable. So you can get each one of these individual components and rebuild the whole thing. So I'm a big fan of that kickstand. Yes, I know it's kind of ugly, it's clunky, it's heavy, it's expensive. So there are some dings about it. I understand that. So the critique is valid, but it's a cool thing for what it does. And if that's your jam, then you're going to want to have one of those on your bike. Let's see over here. This is a Husky. It's 501. And I'm not exactly sure what this is getting at. We could look at the cart. So here's some of the goodies that are going on there. TM Design Works on the front fork lugs. It's got the Tacobout tidy tail package. That's our wiring harness. Here's what it looks like in the bag. You can see it's ready to go, plug and play straight out of the bag. So when we do our builds, we just walk over to the parts shop and pick the parts that go on these bikes. Reflex Racing on the handguards. They have the steel belted, I always say steel belted, but it's the stainless steel cable. And here you can see what that looks like. It's a very flexible mount here between the brackets. So the mounting bracket, which are right here. So this can be a bar clamp style. And so that will then slot into the end here. And I'll show you what that looks like. We have a bike over there that has this all on here. And here's the graphics that go on the handguards. Now, if a rider gets custom graphics, which is often the case, I'll show you 2 bikes that have custom graphics. We can do graphics on the handguards that match your graphics. At Cherubies, these are the fork guards, or the mud guards, and I love those. Those are great. Then you get a tugger strap. Oh, it's branded. Cool. And then here's the Moto Minded. This is the dash, so this is a key relocator, and it has a USB charger and a voltmeter on there. Here's those bar dampers that I was talking about. So these will thread into the end of the bars, and then these are essentially like a damping rod that do really work and do a good job of harshing out some of those vibrations. Flexible turn signals, double take mirrors, which are great. These are the long arm, so round, long arm. There's another version that's round, short arm. I prefer the short arm. Dingo fork guards, this is the upper and lower. Dingo is our #1 preferred fork guard. It has, so the polycarbonate has these little ribs in here that are great at absorbing shock. They look great, good finish. We're a fan of these when it comes to fork protection. What is that? Is that a stabilizer? Yeah, that's the Scott stabilizer. And I think, yeah, Mako 360. And there is the STR on the rear. Well, that's front, so carbon fiber. These are just, I love these. There is a lot to be said for the way we spec out a bike. We're only interested in best in class. For example, skid guard. I use this example quite often. Somebody will say, well, how come, STR, I never heard of them. Well, if you understand our concept and our philosophy, we have on our site the parts that are best in class. We don't have, there are big retailers out there, and if you type in an item, a part, the shark fin, for example, you might have 8 or 10 or 15 returns on that item. And so you have to decide, well, why would I pick one over the other? Is it what all my buddies have? Is it what has a big magazine ad? Is it what the cool kids are putting on? Yeah, there's a lot of marketing and a lot of reasons why. Some brands and some parts are very common. You see them out there a lot. We're not interested in popularity. We're interested in raw performance. So the metrics that go into a choice like this come down to price. Where was it made? I think first and foremost, in many instances, so here's my decision tree. I'm looking for something made in the U.S. or as close to the U.S. as possible, or in a friendly ally country to the U.S., and that's a high priority. And then I'm looking for something that has a fantastic weight to strength to performance ratio. So this is carbon fiber with an aluminum carrier up here. I don't know what the exact weight is, but it feels like it's about 1.25 pounds, probably. I'll see if I can look up the spec or throw it on scale and then put that in the notes. So this thing is ultra light, great looking, rebuildable. You can replace this UHMW wear strip here. You could order any of these components. If anything is lost or wears out, you can get that. And it's got a spacer bushing, so it'll go in a 22 or a 20 millimeter front carrier. So it's pretty universal. Made in Colorado. John over there is great. So there are reasons why we use specific products, and you see them very common on our bikes because they are best in class. And these are all going to be products that provide us with very long-term durability. They're things that don't have warranty claims. I can't think of a single warranty claim we've ever had with that shark fin, or a single complaint or a single problem. When on our website we have products, and it's happened a few times, that have complaints, problems, issues, warranty concerns, we will reach out to the manufacturer to see if they're willing to hear any comments or suggestions, and those are either generated by us or generated by riders and users, or a combination of the two. And in almost every instance, the company is willing to make some design modifications to make their product better, and we love that give and take relationship that we have with a lot of these suppliers and manufacturers, and STR is an example of a good one. So I'm just giving you a little bit of an insight into the decision tree that goes into like why we pick a particular thing and why it goes on a bike, and maybe you see it a couple of times here and there. So bulletproof, these are their levers, and they're articulated. So why do I like these? I like these because they have a bolt here that lets you change the angle of attack on the lever while maintaining the perch location. So what does that matter? Why is that important? This little arm over here contacts the micro switch for, let's look on this because this is Brembo. So on a Brembo, I guess it's off the bike. So on a Brembo, you'll see that there is a micro switch here for the brake, for the rear brake light. Well, on the stock lever here, you cannot articulate very much. In fact, this lever is sort of designed to only articulate to a certain amount and yet maintain. So if I was looking very carefully, but I don't know if you're able to, the camera's able to pick that up. But as you turn this screw, it does change the angle of attack of the lever ever so slightly, but Brembo is protecting the switch. That is to say, they don't want you to adjust the lever so much to get whatever hand position you want, your preference is, that it trips the brake switch. That's a safety issue. You'd have the brake light on. So the amount of adjustability of this lever is super limited. Yes, it will move in and out, but hardly, it's barely noticeable. And in most instances, it doesn't do a sufficient job based on what a rider is going for. And so what the better levers do, and Bulletproof Designs incorporates this into their lever, this base knuckle right here does not change positions. So when you move the nut to change the angle of attack on the lever, it only moves the hand position, but not the base. And that is clever. And that's why we pick Bulletproof. And it's not important on the clutch side because there's no switch, but they do it anyway. And the other benefit that you get out of this is if you take a crash, and this lever will move, right? So it'll bend in the opposite direction, and hopefully that will prevent it from snapping off. And so while I explained the purpose of having that base knuckle here, you don't need it over there, but they still hinge it and they spring it for that other reason, for crash durability. So there's a lot of design, good ideas that's happening on there. So this rider's getting Garmin Zumo X2, is a great little GPS unit. What else? So the Powerflow kit, this is a twin air, so there's a billet cage in here and an upgraded air filter, and then PC Racing for the filter skins. Here's the P3 Racing guard for the exhaust, Tacomoto Get ECU, molecule skid plate, and the Emperor guard. So let's talk about that for a minute. You can see these on a bike. I talk about this all the time. Why do we use Emperor? There's a lot of brands out there. Why do we not typically? We'll have riders sometimes who will specify and say, look, I really want brand X or Y because of personal preference. Fine, we're not going to talk you out of it. If you have loyalty to a brand, we'll install it for you. But if you leave it up to us to help you decide, we are going to coach you that you might want to look at the Emperors. So why are we such a fan of these? Well, first of all, they're a single piece. It's one machined piece. It's fairly thick. I don't know if that's a 1/4 inch. I'd have to put a mic on there. It might be 5 millimeters, maybe 6. And that's a one solid piece. And then you can see the sides here are welded on. And so you have very good side protection, complete bottom protection. There's 6 mounting points. So you have 2 here, and there's 2 little arm over brackets. Let's see if we can, okay, here we go. So the 2 screws here hold this arm, which then secures it to the frame. So there's 6 points that this bracket or this guard is anchored to the frame. And the reason you want this is we have been on rides. I have seen bikes. I've been there, and then I've seen photographs of other guards, no names, that are not a single piece, where a rider, saw this in Idaho, a rider going up a steep incline, the bike didn't loop out, but he sort of fell off the back of the seat, and so the bike came backwards, and there was a rock or a stump or something, and the energy of the impact hit the radiator backwards. The bike was going backwards. Not all crashes are in a forward angle where the energy impacts the front. This one, the energy impacted the back. And what happened was the radiator guard, which was a type that had no side protection, although in this instance, having side protection wouldn't have mattered. But what did happen is, because it only had these 2 mounting screws here and here, is the radiator guard folded, broke. It broke forward. It broke off the frame studs, and it crushed the radiator, and it broke the frame studs. So he not only had a smashed radiator, but then he had to go back home and then have the hassle and expense of re-welding on the radiator, or the brackets rather. So in the same crash, if you would have had these guards, it would not have broken the frame. The radiator probably would have suffered a puncture, but it would not have been ripped off. The radiator, the hoses tore because the energy took the radiator and it just pulled it off the bike, pulled the top hose off, and the radiator was done. So would this have protected in that instance? So he could have at least got out to the road and got on a truck. Possibly, it's really hard to tell, but I can tell you, we have yet, I have never, and never say never, but I have yet to receive an email, a phone call, or see anybody in any of the groups or forums who has had a DNF with this guard on, where they could not get out of a trail, get off a mountain, get out of Baja after having a crash or a loop out with this guard because the radiator was damaged. And I can tell you that other brand guards, I've seen it multiple times. So if you're in if a DNF or a tow out is not an option for you, and it's not for me personally, then this is the guard to go with. And so you'll see this on a lot of our bikes. Not all of them, but a lot of them. This bike's got a recluse. What else is interesting? So we relocate the horn on our builds, and you'll see that we have a bracket. We make a bracket adapter that goes onto the bolt. There's not that one, but there's another bolt under here that holds this chain guide here. And so we put the horn there. We relocate that. Anything else? Here is, you can see this dash is a little more put together, and so you can see what that accessory wire harness looks like. Oh, this is interesting. So these are the molecule handguards. I like these. I like these a lot because they're super light, super trim. These are for riders who are skilled enough to not worry about breaking off hand levers, although they do a good job. These are Baja tested. I have tested these in Mexico. I have seen on my bike, I've got cactuses that are embedded in there and not in my hands. I think they're fabulous. If there's any downside, and there's only one, it takes up some space here on your bars. We are working on a bracket that will come over and will mount here to your clutch and then brake lever perch so that you don't have to sacrifice a little bit of that room. You end up having a pretty stacked bar, but luckily our switch is as slim as it is. This rider also opted to go with the left-hand brake, and that's the aux brake, and it's got a Magura branded master cylinder here. I won't press that because I don't even know if the rear wheel's on. But anyway, this is the brake lever setup. This is the map switch. I wonder if he's going with an OEM reflash. Ah, interesting. Okay, so I think I know what's happening here. This rider has decided, instead of going with a Get ECU or an aftermarket ECU, he's doing the Tacobout stock ECU reflash, and then we've added the OEM map switch, which gives him the 2 maps, quick shift, and then traction control. Quick shift is not active yet in the ECU. We're still working out the software bugs. Our mega nerd, our super good guy who's on that, is handling that, and we hope to have it soon. So that's a cool way to go as well. And so he saved us a couple of bucks for other things like stabilizer. We'll use Mako 360 here. And then this is the Tacobout top plate for GPS mount. And then he's got Peak Designs on his phone. And this is the not self-powered, but it's proximity charging. So when you put your phone in there, if you have a phone that is like a base, like, the kind that you charge just through direct contact, it'll charge your phone off that. And you don't have to plug in anything. Just kind of looking around here to see if there's anything else going on. Oh, okay, interesting. This must be, I understand. Okay, look, I was a little bit confused, but here I'm back on track. This is the 450X CFW. So this is the off-road bike. This is the not street legal bike. That's why it has the map switch, because you get that map switch with this model bike, because this is not a 50 state plated EPA street legal bike. This is the off-road enduro model. So it does not have a full lighting kit. You don't have turn signals and a horn and all that. So on this one, we have a harness that we make that allows this bike to have those power tap functions like we talked about, and then have turn signals and horn. And so here's like a flasher relay for the turn signals, and you can see some of that wiring that's in there. Now back here, this is the connector that will go into the tidy tail and give you the 3-in-1 rear tail end on this bike. He's got a Graves muffler, good choice. That's one of my personal favorites. Here is what you see. You can't see it this well often when a bike is together, but this is the heat shielding that protects the rear shock from all that heat. And here's what the horn looks like, the horn bracket, and then the bolt that secures it on. And this is that little arm over deal for the chain slider right there. What else? Recluse, we talked about that. We do a heat shield. This is a high heat tolerant fabric. I don't know, they call it lava fabric. It's made by Heat Shield Products. You can see the logo right there. And so we put that over the coolant hose because it's so close. It's my finger just barely fits in there. It's less than 1/2 of an inch, I'm sure. So we want to protect that as much as possible, keep as much of that heat out of the shock. So really, there are more, but 2 things that you've seen here are the insulation that goes to protect the shock, and then this here for the coolant hose as well. Moto-minded bomber bar switch, and he's upgraded this in the last little bit, and it's got these little hoods here to protect the switch from just crash damage, breaking off those buttons. That looks really cool, and it's super mega durable. That's probably some of the interesting stuff. Here's that STR guard on a bike in a silver finish. You can see what that looks like unmounted on the bike itself. Golden tire. That's not a typical choice, but golden's a good tire. And you see the difference between a stock wheel. That's a TKC 80 stock tire and the golden tire. This is the original tread pattern of the Shinko 216. So a 216, and then this golden tire. I forget what the number is or what they call it. GT 216 AA. And what size is this? 90. So this is the fatty size. And you can go on the forums and see the debates about, some people will swear by the golden's better and some will say the Shinko's better, and I'll let you decide what you think is better. Here's a shock that's come back from our suspension guy, and it's got an X-Trig installed on it, so now it just needs a spring put on it. This little filter right here is going to go, let's see if we've already put one on this bike. Let's see. Not sure, but the crankcase vent hose, which is here on the original bike, is going to go into the air boot. And well, here's the hose, and it's going to get this filter that's going to go on the end of this hose, and that will be mounted in it'll be just snuck into a little pocket right behind the horn, and it'll be secured in there. It hasn't been completed yet, but they all get that. They're going to get that little filter there. Let's see. Here's a Graves that's going to be going on a bike, and you can see that's a black finish, which is pretty cool. And the Pro Taper bars is what the Husky had. That's what came off of that bike. And here's those OD Road grips that I was talking about. Now, some of these bikes, interestingly, just looking at the throttle cables, some bikes will do a single cable conversion. I do that on all my bikes, and that's just to reduce the amount of friction that's in the cable, to just eliminate some hand fatigue, just some energy management. Anti-gravity 8-cell battery. We do just a little minor surgery to get that in. Let's see if I can pull this up and show that. This battery is the king of batteries. It is the single most powerful, most energy-dense battery. It's 240 cold cranking amps, and then it's 63 watt hours. That is a beefy boy. This is it. This is the single most energy-dense battery of this size, of that footprint. To get it in, though, you just have to do a little trimming. So you'll see here where we kind of routered away, we dremelled away a little groove here to get it into the pocket. And then on the KTM, you have to do a little bit of surgery down on the bottom of the tray. And we have a video that talks about that. And maybe Robert, now look at this. I think Robert came up with an innovation. I think what Robert's doing is putting the foam, and see how he's trimmed the thickness. I think he's making a custom thickness that means the battery sits on top of the little groove there that otherwise kind of makes it stay up and not go super flush. So that's a great innovation that Robert, our shop manager, our build manager, has come up with, and I think that's cool. That's an advanced way over the way I do it. I like it. I think we're probably, this one's getting the auxiliary harness. So why put a harness like this on your EXC bike? Well, first of all, you don't have power tabs. There is no allowance on these bikes for any power accessories. There's no switch 12 volts up here. And if you want 12 volts, then you have to steal it from something else like the headlight. Well, I don't do that on our bikes, on our builds or my bikes, because if you have a short on one of your accessories or some sort of issue and you take out your headlight at night, how smart is that? So I don't do little interface cables that give you 12 volts stolen from the headlight to run a GPS or a phone charger. I don't do that. We do this. So we have this harness that I just talked about earlier. It gives you 2 versions of power. It puts it right here, and it gives you nearly universal capabilities of running any accessory or any combination of accessories off your bar. And if you have a failure there, you don't take out any of the existing circuits, especially lighting, sketchy. You take out the fuses that are the control here. So we have circuit 1, 2, and then a main. Here, this is the unit before it's zip tied in, and so you can see what the different components are. This is the relay that runs it, and that is the same relay that KTM has used for like the last 25 years or so. The starting capacitor goes over there on that side, and here's the power in for that, and all of that gets snuck right in there. We throw a zip tie on that. These wires get tucked down in there. This will live here in the little pocket, and super clean, super tidy. And if any of those handlebar accessories went off on you, they stopped working, you would make your diagnosis and repairs right there with the new fuse. This bike is getting the Warp 9 Elite wheel set, and then it's a cush drive. We talked about that before. Should probably do a video just on the cush drive versus standard drive. So we looked at this bike already, we kind of talked about it. 701, so we've got a 701 in for an upfit and a build out. I think this one's getting graphics, tuning, an air intake system. We've got some Rottweiler parts that are going on here. Chris Parker is really the #1 guy when it comes to the big bikes. I like to think that we have mastered the 250 through 501 class bikes, the XC line, etc. And I think Chris has got the handle on the bigger stuff. And so we're happy and proud to be putting on a couple of his parts on this bike. I'm not sure the total build out list on this, but it is right now actively getting torn down. It's probably the very next bike. So these 3, you can see the status and stage of where they are. And then this one is next. This one's getting torn up and chopped up and coming in next. This guy over here, he's in the queue. This bike showed up a couple of days ago, and I think Robert is still working out the particulars of what's going to happen on that machine. There are bikes. 2 bikes have left in the last 2 days. We sent one to its home with its owner yesterday. Well, let me pause that. I'll get to that bike in a minute. It's still here. It didn't leave. And then another bike left today. And so in any given week, we'll have a bike leave. We'll have a new bike come in. So it's a constant rotation in and out. Over here on the dyno, this is my 25 500. And right now it's getting some really high-level aim tuning, and then we're doing some more ECU tuning. So my machines end up being lab rats. We throw them on the dyno, we go beat them up, we try to use them up for all the different, let's go up here and take a look. So Dusty, who is our tuning ace, has been deep diving on the aim. Here we have an O2 sensor, a lambda sensor controller, and there's a data acquisition box. And so we're looking to do a tune at home program where we will send you, so you can have an existing aim Taipan ECU, or you can get one, and then we'll have the tune already preloaded into the ECU. And if you wanted to have that tune completely optimized for your very specific bike, then we would send you a header with the O2, the harness, the data collection module, the Lambda controller sensor. We're going to package all of this. We're probably going to make some custom cables so you don't have all of this extra cabling. And then we'll have some sort of situation, a 3D printed bracket somewhere up here around the headlight. You'll zip tie it to your forks, and then you'll go do some test runs, go ride your bike, and then we'll collect that data, make the tune adjustment changes. We'll email it back to you. You can send it to the ECU. And by the end of it, you will have a 100% completely custom tune to your exact specific machine. That is wicked awesome. This one is a stock ECU reflash. We're continuing to work on that, develop that, improve that. So we're always trying to be the leader in everything tuning on these bikes, everything electrical, just anything we can do to make these the best bikes in the world. Here's one that's getting ready to head out the door to its owner. This rider's from Connecticut, and it's going to get on a truck here soon and head out to him. So he's got the Moscow 40 bags. This is clearly a rider who's going to do the BDRs. He's going to do some tats. He's going to be doing some adventuring on this bike. And so he's got all the guards, skid plates, push drive hub. I mean, this machine is really like item for item. I'll be doing a video on this here pretty soon, but just it's 100% well chosen, well spec'd. I'm really impressed. This rider knew what he was doing when he put this bike together, and it's got the tower. These are made in Australia by our buddy Joe, and Joe, his business is Yencro. So we buy these from him 20 at a time, and we do some upgrades and some upfits, and we've had a great relationship with Joe. He's been very helpful and flexible in terms of like, as we want specific things, like we kind of understand the US market and what our riders want and what we want in terms of functionality and capabilities for our builds, and we'll make requests and have changes or improvements. And Joe has just done a great job. It's so great working with him. And the bracket right here, you'll see, oh, reflex. Didn't I talk about reflex a minute ago? And I said we would show one on the bike. So here is that steel cable. It's covered under these little sliders here, but you'll see how that comes around and what it looks like. I think that's just a great bar guard, and I love it. Very light. It doesn't impart any stiffness or rigidity to the bar system. So this little tower situation here, it mounts with a bracket that goes to, I'll show you here. So it mounts to these two bolts, these here, which would be like on a motocross bike, which would be where the bracket is for the mask. Well, that's actually, let me kind of correct that. If it's a motocross bike and it's a flat mask, a dead face mask, then the bolt's going to go there. But this is where the Speedo will mount. So here you go. So the two bolts that hold the Speedo on, those two bolt holes, which are those, is where this bracket secures. That bracket then is held tight. If you need to remove the tower, you'll take out these. There's two bolts here on each side. Maybe I'll show you the other side. There's a bracket. Here, this arm over bracket, these two bolts. So you'd remove those two bolts. And when you do, then you'll see that under here, there is this little yoke with a little bar here at the top, and that fits into a grommet, a hole and then a grommet, and that's what holds it here on the bottom. So the bottom is secured on the top fender with two bolts. This is the top bracket that holds it here on the triple clamp. It has a little arm over bracket for the turn signals, and that's it. So the amount of time it would take to convert this bike back to a standard headlight, I do mine. So I have a 501, I have a 24-501, and I fairly often will convert from single track bike to a BDR bike, and I'll spend half an hour to 45 minutes doing that conversion. It's not particularly difficult. It is a little fussy in that when you have so much space to cram in your wiring for all your accessories, you can be lazy and you just tuck it all in there. You can be neat with it, obviously, but you have so much space. You can be pretty thoughtless, careless, and you understand what I'm saying, to put that wire in there. You just got all this room. Now, when you go back to a standard headlight, all of that wire has to be managed and organized and arranged so it's not stacked and it fits and it's tidy in there. That's what takes the most time. Not removing this. This is 5 minutes to get this off, but just wire management, cable management, that's the time. So that half hour, whatever you spend, really it's in about, like I said, it's getting those wires sorted out. But there's plenty of riders that do it. And this tower, this mini tower, lets you get away with something like a Voyager Pro. You can see the mount there. We have a Moto-minded stout. Well, it's not that's not the stout mount, but that's just the angle bracket that lives under there. And then on top, you could put, now remember this bike over here that has this Peak Designs little arm over, that phone holder is what I like to do on my own bike. I like to put that here. And so I'll have a phone, my Android phone running Onyx in vertical, and then either a Voyager Pro or a Garmin here in horizontal flat like this. So then what we do is we'll put the USB, you have a USB-C and a standard over there. Key is located here, the turn signal is there. And you have all kinds of room. There's little stud-ins for brackets that could go there. You see that we put the stock Speedo. That thing lives right here on the side. You want to retain that, and so that's where that guy goes. And then all of this, wow, this guy's gonna have he'll have a Garmin, that's a Garmin base. So he'll have a Garmin and his Voyager Pro. And then you heard what I said about the phone. That's my preference. Heated grips, same grips that are going on that bike there. This bike is the one that is also getting a tower just like this. Heated grips here. And you'll see we've got the switch and then the get master switch. That. And then that's Tacomoto on off, so start kill switch over there. These are the bulletproof levers, and you'll see how they move out. So if you had a crash and it went the other way, that's what that gets you. And then because this is a Magura doesn't have a micro switch, they have a pressure switch. So here is the banjo nut pressure switch that controls that. So the fact that this has a fixed base knuckle doesn't serve the same purpose as it does like on the Brembo, but they do it anyway because it gives you the articulation. This is the Tacomoto mount here that goes on top of the Mako 360. This is our bracket that gives you lots of different mounting options and versions for whatever device you're going to put up there. On the top, bigger tank. Let's see, Cherubi's tank. And then this bike, well, I'll save that. I was going to talk about the double snorkel system. This bike will be getting a double snorkel. It's not been installed yet. I'll talk about that in a second. And you see the rally cable brackets that allows you to, like rally bike style, have the flex there, and then the brake cable is fixed so it doesn't interfere and move around and slap around with all that stuff. So you can clearly see this bike has been well spec'd and is well designed. It's very well thought through, and that's going to be a killer BDR overland adventure bike. Now, the other one that I was talking about, so to this week, let me zoom out a little bit. So to this week, this is a rider who came in to do a fly-in ride. He, I think is from Kansas City, came to Vegas, wanted to take the bike out, just do a shakeout ride. And so he rode around the Vegas area in the mountains and on the trails. And he came back sweaty. It was hot. It was an unfortunately very hot day, like easily 110. Came in really sweaty, but really happy. And so he had a couple of tweaks and adjustments we're going to make. And we also have installed on this the snorkel system here. So this thing gives us two, let's see if we can take a peek down in there. So we have two drinking straws that pull from both wings. And we'll pull every last drop of fuel out of this tank all the way down in each wing. And then our system has a air liquid separator. So as this one goes dry first, we're not sucking air into the pump and cavitating it or causing any running issues. We have a separator in there. And so we don't care. We don't care if that one sucks air. We'll continue to suck the liquid out of the other side until it is completely done. And the reason why we went with the double snorkel is if you are bouncing around and fuel is being thrown over into this wing, it would otherwise stay trapped. And it's our goal when we develop any product Tacomoto does, we want an uncompromising performance result. The fact that we would trap fuel over in the right-hand wing and make it unavailable was unacceptable. So we used a system, we used some tech that would overcome that. And we didn't want that problem, and so we don't have that problem. We're pulling from both wings until it's completely bone dry. And so this bike is not the very first one that's getting the Taco Snorkel. There's been a few others, but it's the only one here. And then on the bottom, you'll see there's the little magnet attachment points here for that. So back to this bike, the bike is done, and the rider came in to do that shakeout ride. He rode it, brought the bike back. So we're going to make a few tweaks and adjustments per his request, get it cleaned up, do a final check out, do a few other things, and then it's going to go on a truck and it's going to go to his house. He's got the Ruby R7 light, great light, probably our favorite all-around light out there, and you can see he had a great time. The guy came back with a big grin, a big smile on his face. He had a super good time, and he was really happy about things. Also, maybe something to show here. Now we're redoing the bracket, but this is the Barotech, and I think it's called the Cumpan, C-U-M-P-A-N. This little device made in Germany, and it is a gear position sensor, coolant temp, tach, shift, not shift indicator, but gear position, so it'll give you a neutral indicator, ambient air temperature. It does quite a few things in a little small footprint. Very cool. You can get these from them. But here's what we do. We change some of the programming parameters to make it a little more user-friendly. We set some of the base values on that. And we also use connectors so that it's plug and play. You plug it into the OEM, KTM, the gear position sensor, and there's a couple other things. So instead of having to splice or use wire posi-tap type connectors, we want to eliminate that. We want to make it plug and play, plug and ride ready. And so when you get these from us, and I don't think these are on the site just yet. A lot of times Tacomoto is in the process of creating a thing, developing a thing. You know, we're constantly, because we focus on such a narrow platform, like I said, we really only, when we started, we only did the XC. And so we have branched out a little bit. We've expanded. We've got some Honda stuff. And here you see a CRF. This is a 25 450 RL. And we do ECU. We do GET. Here we've got the GET data collection system on this. You can see the O2. We've got a bung out right now, but the O2 for the GET system. ECU is missing, whatever. And there's a GPS antenna here so we can see real-time location, over-the-ground speed, all kinds of data is happening on this bike. And so we do some stuff for the Honda. I think we've talked to a few riders who want to do build outs on the Honda. Honda riders are kind of a unique subset of animal. They tend to not go all out and go super nutty like our KTM riders do. And that's all great. We like all motorcycles. We like all riders. The KTM guys, we just seem to, me included, we just seem to like these bikes as a platform for building off. These are kind of like Lego sets to some of us, and we just customize and add things and do really cool stuff. So I guess what I was saying is we innovate and create parts, and we've primarily worked on that EXC platform, but you can see that's not always the case. Here we have so that's the chassis there is 690, 700, and a gas. So KTM would be a 690, gas is 700, and then a Husqvarna is 701. So we've got products and accessories coming for that. We've got them for the Honda. Obviously, we have them for this platform. And so we're just trying to meet the needs and the customer demand. People ask us all the time for extra things, and we're always chasing, and we're always interested in innovating and developing new stuff. So there are things like, I guess the point that I was making is this isn't on the site yet because we're still working on it. We're still developing it. That's kind of how the snorkel, the double snorkel happened, is we had customer feedback. I ran out of gas and I still have gas in the tank. And the off-road guys, the hardcore off-road guys, aren't having this problem because their fuel is bouncing and dancing and sloshing in there. And they will say in the comments, oh, I never run out of gas. and you probably don't because you're continually off-road and bouncing around. However, there are dual sport riders and rally racers who do run out of gas because they will have some pavement sections. They'll use, say, 50% of their fuel bouncing around, and then now they have a transfer section and they're on the road and they're out of gas. And yet they have fuel still sitting in the wings. So those were the, I don't know if complaint's the right word, but those were what we were seeing, and then we responded with a solution. And that's really our model, is to do exactly that. Let me look around. This is, so as we finish up with this bike, he's got the Moscow 10s on here with their little knoblin attachment point back here. Now the fender, the rear fender on this new generation chassis bike will carry about 45 pounds. And that, I tested that in Mexico using the Moscow 40s, loaded out with some water and up to about 45 pounds. And I ran that for, I don't know, three and a half, 4 days, and had no issues, no flexing. I stripped the entire tail end of the bike off and inspected it and didn't see any cracking or stretches or anything like that. Now, that was a limited amount of time. If you compounded that by many orders of magnitude, would you start to introduce some flex stress issues, especially at some of the bolt areas? So you can see here, there's 4 bolts that hold it here. Are some of these going to start to show fatigue over time? Will stuff develop? Probably. But I don't have that level of experience, and I would love it if anybody in the comments does. You can go ahead and put that in there. The racks, True North Motos does a good job of making a rack for the KTM 24 plus generation bikes, but not for the Husky and not for the Gas. They're different. Their plastics are different. The way they're configured is a little different. So I guess all of that to say, don't lose any sleep over putting the Moscow rackless system. And they also have this very cool weight distribution, and it's what I think is really novel and interesting about this is it's got all of these little screws and attachment areas, and it's adjustable and configurable. You can articulate this narrower or wider to suit not only your preference but the specific bike that you're putting it on, and you can mount this further forward or further aft depending on where you want this significant load to be. So if you wanted, some riders will take, and now this is sort of a happy medium. It's far enough back that it's clearly on the rear fender, but there's a little bit of weight distribution over the seat. When you put the seat on, you have to loosen the straps to get the seat under. So some of this forward edge weight is sitting on the seat, and then there's less weight by surface area here on the tail fender. In fact, the tail end, you might be interested, we'd see if we could kind of figure this out, but it depending on how you cinched it here, the weight bias might even be, it might be in lift, so you might be in compression here and lift here, and that would be a really ideal setup. So the Moscow system I think is very cool because you can adjust all of these attachment points, and it has this anchor situation. So under here we've got like a large fender washer and then a nut through, and that's distributing the load, and again it's probably pulling up. That's this bike. Really cool. I really like the graphics on this. This is a custom graphics package that we put together, and it's got this chrome shiny thing going on. I think that's pretty rad. What's over here? So Tacomoto, these are the fuel pumps. We're just doing some testing. So every one of these pumps that go out the door, we pressure test each one. So we connect them. The rig is all taken apart, but we put a constant, we use a power supply, constant voltage power supply to get a very specific voltage. We run them all at the same voltage, although we will vary it just to check pressure through the sweep. So a typical bike will start, a typical battery is 12.8. If it's lithium, it's more like 13.1, but a lead acid battery at rest might be down to 12.7, 12.8. And a bike will start at that, but because the voltage is lower, the fuel pressure will be lower because the motor is turning slower with the lower voltage. And we want to make sure that pressure, starting pressure, stays within the acceptable range. This bike right here will start at 35 PSI. So 35 PSI will start that bike. It won't run great, but it'll start. And as soon as it starts, so if you had a bike on that had a low voltage situation, a weak battery, you can get it started, and then like 12.7, 12.6, 12.7, 12.8. Once it starts, the stator starts spinning, your voltage is going to pick up, and then the pressure will pick up. So a bike, sometimes with a weak battery, won't start. It'll crank. You'll hear it crank, but it may not fire. And in some instances, it's not firing because there's not enough voltage to run the fuel pump at a high enough RPM speed to build up to 35 PSI. And in some of those instances, when you have a cranks won't start or a slow crank won't start, it's because your field pressure is low, because your battery voltage is weak. And you just jump box that bike, and then it'll fire right up. And what you may not have known was that's why it didn't start, because the pressure was low. So we want to make sure that our pumps can operate in a voltage range that will get your bike started at about 12.6 is what I'm shooting for. 35 PSI at 12.6, 12.6 volts. Anything above that, of course, it's going to start. And when you're on full boil, when you're like at 4,500 RPM, you're making the most power you're going to make. And now you're so if you have no accessories and your light is in low or maybe even off, your battery voltage is going to go up to 13.8, 13.9. It might even dance with 14 volts. And at that voltage, your pump motor is going to be putting out about 51 to 52 PSI. So your operating pressure of your fuel pump is based on what the voltage is. So blah, blah, blah. All of that to say, when we test these pumps, these double circle pumps, we are making sure that our regulator, the pressure regulator, is tuned and the system is delivering enough pressure, like I said, to get your bike started and running. That might be it. That's the shop tour of today. What's going on in the Tacomoto build shop. This is the build side of our business. You have seen other videos. Ian from Big Rock Moto came and did a shop tour of our parts department. And in fact, I probably should do another one because we've moved. So that video was in our old spot, and we moved recently to a bigger parts department shop. So we have two different suites here in this commercial park. You just saw the build shop, and then I'll see if I have time at some point in the near future to do the parts side. So that's it. That's the tour. If you have any questions about anything you saw or anything that we do or anything that we can help you with, let us know. Hit us up in the comments. Like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.